Welcome back to another rabbit hole of racing wheels. Yeah, that's absolutely what we can call it, because there are so many different solutions. In this video, I wanted to focus on the Logitech G25, G27 and the G29. Are these particular three wheels still worth buying? Because there are a lot of different models out there, and even new ones, and pro version, you name it, and really old stuff that we've been chit-chatting about here on the channel. But I wanted to focus on the G series because those are quite cool. The G25 and G27 need to be looked up into the second-hand market space if you want to buy one in box or just loose. I've been hearing stories of people finding them for like $50 from thrift shops or other places. And if you can find them with some warranty that the force feedback still works, I think you can have a really cool overall emulation, or let's say racing simulation, emulation support, and have a lot of fun. But the question remains, if you're going to be comparing the G25, G27 and G29, which one should you pick? Because depending on the platform, there are a lot of differences that you need to take consideration, but a lot of cool features. So let's deep dive into it, and let's start with the G25 and let's see how it is now. I think it's safe to say that the Logitech G25 was the first generation of, let's say, the G series that had like the next generation of racing wheel solutions. I mean, particularly not only the force feedback, but also with everything that came with it. Having a very cool, let's say, shifter and the pedals, what they're still using all the way today, yeah, we can do some really cool things with that. However, it was very limited. I'm always getting this Need for Speed Underground or Fast Furious like vibes with the two buttons for the NOS. Man, I really find that really cool and nostalgia. So I really love let's say the overall quality of this, like the simplicity, but also the quality with the aluminium, or at least metal. It is aluminium or metal middle part, Logitech logo in the middle, but the way you can just also modify it. That is something we should like discuss more here on the channel, because man, the Logitech and modding community is absolutely nuts. But if you're just going to be leaving as it is, I really love the shape of the wheel, and yeah, the shifters like behind the wheel is just really amazing, like these very cool metal ones. And where we do have like a little bit of travel, they are a very nice micro switch, so the convenient and yeah, the way if you're going to be playing, this is very nice, and I love it about the G25. So we can play with the shifter, with the with all the kind of the 6 gear. There are all kinds of very cool features. The Logitech wheel I'm having over here have some really nice leather still, and I think that's one of the very cool qualities of the Logitech racing wheel itself. And yeah, the overall quality, that's one thing you need to take consideration when you're getting a wheel like this, that everything still looks nice. Otherwise you need to do some modifications or maybe changing out the wheel itself. The design of the case is something they have been using a very long time. Of course, the internal parts have been changed and upgraded, but the way how this thing looks and how you need to assemble this is, particularly the assembly, it's going to be the same kind of system like with the older one that we already discussed. The only difference is that now we can just push in and push out the buttons, and slightly different configuration, but the way how this works is just perfect. Everything has been attached. So if you're looking over here, you can see that if you want to attach the shifter to your desktop, it works very well. You have two ways, or better said, two buttons like the steering wheel, and the third one, you really need the third one, otherwise it's going to be moving around. Next up, let's take a close look at the shifter itself, because what I think that is something a unique thing that they basically removed from the newer models. As you can see over here, we're having just the option to swap it over. Let's push it in. A little bit tricky. All right. As you can see here, now we're having more the option like shift up, shift down. So we're having more like the 6 gear with reverse, and we're having just the push shifter. I think it's pretty cool. The shifting option, I really like it. It gives a completely new dimension to the racing games, but I really need to get used to it. Simply because sometimes I miss shifting. So I really need to get used to the shift gear. Nevertheless, here we're having the 4 buttons. We can configure in the game, D-pad for navigating, and of course the 4 buttons, when I say A, B, X, Y. So all the buttons we're going to need. The pedals, let's talk about the pedals, because when you're looking at them, you're looking at the older, newer models, there are not a lot of, let's say, differences. Maybe when you're looking inside there will be some differences, but in overall they're the same. The connector that goes into the steering wheel, the same like the shifter. Alright, so but let's take a close look at it, because first of all, it's just a gigantic beast, and I think it was pretty cool that we're having also a clutch. So if you want to give the simulation and the racing to the next level, the clutch is something you just need to have. And as you can see over here, 4 with RVS, beautiful, different kind of springs in it, give you a completely different racing simulator. I must say, what I do like about this Logitech racing wheel stuff is that we can also having some modification that you can buy online if you're not liking them. Alright, so I needed to dig through my Steam list to check out which game has the best support. There is a wiki page for this, but I did notice there is a big difference between games. So this game is Project Cars, the first one, a game that I really started to like. Don't mind my gameplay, I am not a big racing genius, so I just was messing around with the steering wheel in this game. I'm more familiar to the racing arcade games, but nevertheless this game is, it's getting to me. I really like it, how it plays and how it reacts to the steering wheel. And even for a G25 that is especially even supported with this game, you can just know that, you can feel that this game is just perfect and it works like a charm. The Logitech G27 was another great old racing wheel, so this was improved, and I think mainly when it comes to let's say the parts like the racing wheel, and they did some improvement but also changed it out to the shifter itself. So it's the same quality like the G25, so where the G27 is a little bit younger when it comes to the racing wheel itself, maybe it's possible to find this one in also good condition. So also double check everything if you're going to be finding this secondhand, or ask the seller if it's online how the overall condition is, and even ask for more pictures, and of course the force feedback. Having even an RPM meter, that's kind of cool, but that particular thing, it's going to be more like a software compatibility issue. If some of the games don't support it, you will not see it. So it's a cool gimmick, but something is not always compatible with every single game you're going to be playing. So configuration with the shifters and everything else is the same like the G25, and there's actually nothing to complain there. So one of the cool features I love about this G25 and G27 racing wheels itself. The shifter itself is slightly different if you're looking at the G25. There is an improvement with the gearbox to give more like a realistic feel to it. I must say that I did indeed like it more than the G25, simply because it doesn't feel more like this wiggle stick inside a gearbox. Nevertheless, we're having here the 4 buttons and D-pad and 4 red buttons, so we can all reconfigure if you want to do some stuff in the game. So when you're looking at the way you need to assemble it, exactly the same thing like the wheel, but the shifter indeed feels way better. I wouldn't say it's more realistic, but it feels way better when you need to shift. And they removed the knob, so this option is not available anymore with this G27. The mounting system is the same like the steering wheel itself. I like it, but you're also going to need the third one, otherwise it will move around when you're using the shifter. And here we have the cable that goes into the steering wheel. I have played with a lot of, let's say, basic Logitech FX kind of version, they're only having 2 pedals, and the 3 pedal is just really cool if you want to have more like a simulation. With Project Cars you can really use the clutch itself, and it is just a completely new addition, and it gives more like an extra simulation in my opinion. So when you're looking at this, the pedals are exactly the same, or so far I see the same like the G25, and I must say what I do like about it, that we're having 3 different springs over here. And it gives more like a simulation, how does it feel. Take consideration that you can change these out. There are a lot of modifications when it comes to these springs. So I think the community itself and what you can do with these pedals are pretty cool. And here we have the connector that goes into the steering wheel like the shifter, but you can't mess them up. So the racing pedals is just a really cool addition to this G series of racing wheels. And so far I know they are all the same when it comes to every single model. But take consideration when you're buying one used, always ask if the power supply is with the steering wheel. You're going to need it, and it's a special one, a special voltage 24 volt DC. So it's something you need to take consideration when you're getting a wheel, otherwise you need to buy one separately. Compatibility when it comes to PC, I did notice that my favorite game, Forza Horizon, is actually working perfectly with this. And I think that's one of the things you need to take consideration. If you're getting into the G25 and the G27, where these things are like prehistoric racing wheels, the compatibility is so much better. Compared with the Wingman and all the other stuff. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it's possible that those also work, but still the overall compatibility and the quality of the G25 and G27 are absolutely superior against the really old racing wheels. And I think they're like a lot of fun if you're going to be hooking this up to the PC. So when it comes to console gaming, that's going to be a completely different story and video. Nevertheless, Forza Horizon is a great game to play if you want to use the shifter or you just want to have the shift pedal. Nevertheless, it's a great game to have more like an arcade racing experience. But if you're having a Logitech G27 and you're going to play Project Cars, one of these many games you can play, this will give you the really exciting simulation. You also can use the third pedal that I'm using in this video, and yeah, it gives you this racing experience to the next level. Project Cars is one of my favorite simulation games at the moment. But the Logitech G29 is a completely different story. So first of all, I even noticed they're using this particular racing wheel into arcade machines, because you can even do some emulation. So also for emulation, we do have the option to utilize everything like the pedals, the clutch, and of course certain games. And if you're having the shifter and everything has been configured, it even seems to be working with this. So first of all, I think the Logitech G29 is a quite, let's say, versatile, let's say, model. Would have like support for newer, but also when it comes to older stuff. And of course, in this case, if you want to do a little bit of an emulation, that is even possible. Compared with the Logitech 25 and the 27, the Logitech 29 actually has support for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 and the PC. So this thing is so much better when it comes to, let's say, the older wheels, where we do sometimes have an option to actually connect it to a modern system, but it's something of a completely different story. It's not like an easy plug and play solution. So basically all three of them will have, let's say, the PC support when it comes to that, but of course the G29 driving force is just a superior wheel because it's also newer. The interesting part is when you're going to be comparing all three wheels, you can actually see that the G29 is completely different. This thing utilizes way more buttons than all the previous models before. And this is one of the convenient part about this particular model too. So when it comes to, let's say, the overall quality, so when it comes to the look itself, like it's slightly different, but when it comes to the quality, it's still the same like the 25 and the 27 models. Of course, we're having the leather wheel look. That is something, it's kind of funny. If you're going to be comparing this with Thrustmaster, it's not a common thing because a lot of racing wheels still uses like rubber or just plastic or a combination of these. The body itself is exactly the same. Also with the mounting, they didn't really change out. And also the feel, it's going to be slightly different than of course the older models, but when it comes to what I understand of the mechanics, they didn't change out a lot of things. Of course, minor changes. I think it's more like the feel, but also when it comes to buttons, there we're going to be having the biggest changes. But okay, so the Logitech 29 is like playing a lot of fun. Comparing it with the older version, 25-27, we do have a minor difference in my opinion when it comes to the feel itself. But yeah, if you're going to be comparing three of them, you're going to be using them on PC. No, I think it's not going to be like this biggest difference, like this life-changing racing simulation difference. The 29 is, let's say, better when it comes to software, and it's more having an overall better support when it comes to playing racing games because of the newer, let's say, version, but also when it comes to the software itself. But it was a lot of fun enjoying the same game. Project Cars was like having a great support, and also the newer games like Forza Horizon. The shifter is not implemented into the kit. Maybe in the future they will change it out, but so far as making this video, the G29 doesn't come with a shifter. So if you want to have one, you need to purchase that separately, and it will cost you a little bit extra. However, is this something you're really going to be missing out? That is of course how much you love simulation. If you just love the shifters, you don't need to buy it. And I think maybe that is one of the reasons they went for this. However, if you're going to want to have the full simulation experience, of course the shifter is something you're going to be needing. In the future we'll make more like an extended shifter review where I'm also going to compare all of the shifter of Logitech. In the left over here we're going to get the G27. It's very similar, but I just wanted to give you like a quick side-by-side look. Like it is feeling slightly different, and also it sounds completely different. So that makes me wonder like, okay, now we don't have the buttons anymore on the G27 shifter. Personally, I really prefer this, like this new approach that we're going to get all the buttons on the wheel, but that's of course my personal opinion. So if this shifter is something that you need to buy, that is something you need to decide for yourself. I'm just going to be honest, I was quite skeptical because I didn't like the two other models I've reviewed, but this version feels slightly better. So with the previous model, I always had like this handicap that I'm putting it in the wrong freaking gear. But with this new model I don't have this issue anymore. It feels slightly better. I feel like having a real gear shifter in my hand. Of course nothing beats a real car shifter, but it's a very big improvement. It's a completely different way to play, and in my opinion the shifters are really cool, but this gives you like a more and better control of your car. Don't mind me, like I was just driving through the grass, but in the end like I really like it, and it gives me like an even more fun factor when playing with the racing wheel. But if you're going to be looking into the stores, nowadays we're getting the G29 with a PlayStation 5 white theme box, because it's also compatible with PlayStation 5. And what I understand, if you're getting an old used G29 that has not the same box, it still needs to be working on this. So it's kind of cool, and we have the option to actually play all of these newer generation games with a G29 that has been on the market for some time.